Madaraka Express is celebrating its first anniversary. The Chinese-funded railway line has spurred economic growth. It has also eased traffic congestion, providing a fast and reliable mode of transport between the capital, Nairobi, and the port city of Mombasa. CGTN's Nagila joins us live from the Nairobi terminus. Well,
Thank you very much, Beatrice.
Robert, you are at the SGR terminus there, and of course Kenya is now celebrating 1 year since the inauguration of that SGR railway. Months after the launch of the SGR, how has it benefited Kenya?
Well, thank you very much, Beatrice. On the one hand, it has made transportation, travel between the coastal city of Mombasa and the capital, Nairobi, a total distance of about 480 kilometers, much simpler for very many people in Kenya. Speaking to the minister, he says that in the last 12 months, they've transported about 1.3 million people. This has made them as such, they've had to increase the volume of trains plying between the two cities. You now have 2 trains leaving Mombasa each day, 2 trains leaving Nairobi each day. And they say that as the volumes increase, as they expect them to, the number of trains plying this route will increase. However, it's instrumental to note that the prime function of this particular rail line is not passengers, but cargo. And in the last 1 year, they've managed to transport about 600,000 tons of cargo alone. However, they will be the first to admit that those numbers are still low. And as they put the logistics into place, as they continue to finish the line on towards Malaba, they expect those the number of cargo, the number of containers being transported from Mombasa all the way to the border distance for Uganda, Rwanda, the DRC to increase, and we'll get to see more trains, more cargo trains also put on these tracks as we speak. The morning train from Mombasa is just arriving, but I'll just get off the shot so that you can get a glimpse of it very quickly. So this is the morning train that left Mombasa shortly about 8:30, 9 o'clock, leaves on time, on schedule, so if you're not there, you miss it. Now this is the county line that would have to stop at about 4 or 5 different stations that have been built along this same line coming here. You've got another line, this is the express line, which is just behind me, which is scheduled to leave in about 30-35 minutes from now. Now this will go directly all the way to Mombasa. Will take about 4.5-5 hours maximum to get there. Beatrice?
Robert, it does seem that it has had a massive impact on Kenya's trade route, and of course it is expected that it will be taking the trade routes through to Uganda in coming months though. So how exactly have Kenyans, would you say, responded to the railway line?
Oh yes, Beatrice, just before I get on to your second question, perhaps what we need to add for the sake of our viewers is that yes, it will get to the border with Malaba, but that's phase 2 that's being built as we speak at this particular moment. They've done quite a bit of it, and that's heading on to Naivasha, and then that will head to the port city of Kisumu and then on to the border. Now in terms of how this line, this service has been received by Kenyans, it's been received very well, I must say. We took the train 2 days ago to Mombasa. We had a chance to speak to a few of them, and the first thing that everybody says is convenience. Number one, the convenience, time, there's no traffic on the way, and affordability as well. This is what we had to say. Let's just have a look at this package.
One by one, they show their tickets before stepping on board the Madaraka Express. In the past year, around 1.3 million people have taken this train.
Within about a few months, because of the demand outstripping supply, we had to increase the service by an extra train.
And it's carried more than 600,000 tons of cargo between the coast and the capital. The standard gauge railway is the country's flagship infrastructure project, and a favorite among those who've traveled on it.
Because of time, there is no traffic jam. When they say it is 6 hours between Mombasa and Nairobi, it remains to be so.
Yeah, so I took it because I want to reach Mombasa by around noon, finish the business, spend the day and leave tomorrow morning.
The convenience, the affordability. We used to use the train when we were young, so it's just something I'd like to relive.
The train she's referring to was the Link, built by the British more than a century ago. The new one is part of China's Belt and Road initiative to connect markets across continents. It is smooth and quiet, and it weaves its way through some of the prettiest countryside in Africa. And it's reliable. Despite 5 stops at newly built modern stations, we cover the 480-kilometer ride to Mombasa in 5.5 hours. The old train took almost 3 times as long.
And Beatrice, when you speak to government officials, especially the Transport Minister James Macharia, they will tell you this is just the beginning of great things to come. They expect this to spur Kenya's economy much faster growth than we've experienced over the last few years. So a great many things expected from this in the coming years. Beatrice?
Right, Robert Nagila for us there on the standard gauge railway in Nairobi. Thank you for that update. Well, let's discuss the impact the SGR has had on Kenya and in the region. I'm joined by Professor Peter Kagwanja in studio with me. He's the CEO of the Africa Policy Institute. Professor Kagwanja, thank you for joining us on Africa Live. Robert has just been talking about the impact that the standard gauge railway has had on Kenya's economy and trade in the last 1 year. Now, it is one of the biggest infrastructural projects in Kenya. How do you think it has transformed the lives of the ordinary Kenyan?
Let me start with myself. I was in the premier inaugural trip from Mombasa to Nairobi, and it transformed my life because I developed a new imagination of Kenya. I've never traveled so fast on land. It's 120 kilometers per hour. And the fastest bus is 80 kilometers per hour. So it has cut the distance from Mombasa to Nairobi astronomically. I can tell you for sure, all the hotels in Mombasa are booked because it is easier to move from Nakuru by railroad, and then join the SGR railway, go to Mombasa within 5 hours. Can you imagine? We've never had imagined that. On a more serious note, if you look at the in 2016, 2017, the 95% of our cargo from Mombasa to Nairobi or Nairobi to Mombasa, 95% was by road. As we approach the cargo train, we are seeing reduction to 50% and possibly to less than 50% in the coming years. What that means is that our roads are safer, they are faster, and they are less worn out by overloading. The traffic jam we used to experience for days, not hours, are over. To be sure, by December last year, the train was booked up to February. The reason being Kenyans have welcomed this, and we're expecting that the train will pay itself. So the talk about debt burden is simply mythical. Right. Because the truth of the matter is that the train will pay for itself because it is the most profitable project we have seen in years in this country. You did mention about the trade, the impact that the cargo transportation now from Mombasa to Nairobi is having. And of course, we are going to be expecting that the train itself is moving inward into the East African region. How has the SGR, though, impacted or developed the East African economies, given the fact that Mombasa port is the entry for most goods coming into Uganda, into Rwanda, into Burundi, and so forth? The unique aspect of SGR is that it's not a Kenya-centric transport. It is targeting a broader region, even beyond the East African region. We can now begin to imagine a railway from Mombasa to Cameroon. We can imagine it from to Gabon, because that is the potential of the railway. Meanwhile, within the East African region, we can now talk about one region, because we are connected, or will be connected within a year or so by one railway. Ugandans have started their leg of the trip. The Rwandese have started. The South Sudanese will start theirs. And what we are seeing is now the East African economy is going to become a network, thanks to the SGR railway. We are going to see the opening up of trade between the various countries in the region. Transport to and to these countries is cheaper, is affordable, and is faster. And therefore, the economies are going to open up. We are also going to see the spurring of industrialization in the region, right, because you can carry heavy material like iron, steel, to construct roads and buildings. So we are going to see economy spanned in other back and forth linkages that we've never seen in this region. So the beauty about SGR railway is that it is not a transport line. It has multiplier effect in terms of how it is opening up the economies, not just the Kenyan economy, but the economies of Uganda. Eastern Congo is going to be just a few hours away. And currently, you may not be able to go to Eastern Congo unless you fly in. We'll be able to go into Congo and other parts of Africa. It's a miracle, I'm telling you.
It is a miracle in your words. And this is part of China's One Belt, One Road strategy for Africa's trade as well. But China's relations have grown over the last decade, and we are seeing the manifestation from projects such as the standard gauge railway in East Africa. What's your assessment of this collaboration, and what can we expect in future, particularly going forth now to the 4th Forum on Africa-China Cooperation?
I think as we go towards the September FOCAC summit, the one thing that can be said is that China is a genuine partner for Africa. And two, China is basically pressing the right buttons. Africa does not need lectures. What it needs are activities or innovations, investments that improve the lives of the people, eliminate poverty. And China itself is a good example of how a concerted leadership of a country can open up an economy, reduce poverty for people, and improve the welfare of humanity at large. And I think Africa is taking China's lesson seriously. And also, remember, China is not a colonial power. Therefore, China is promising a safer world. It's promising a world that is less antagonistic, less hegemonic, and based on a win-win situation. And we're not saying this propagandistically. It is demonstrating itself. We have already seen a superpower take from another superpower economically without any conflict. China is now an economic superpower. We've not seen any conflict and no tension. And it is actually safeguarding the global economy. For Africa, that is really the dream we've had. When we talked about non-alignment, we were talking about concentrating on what is good for our people. And what is good for our people is what China is doing. SGR is just an example of the One Belt, One Road initiative. And the Belt and Road initiative is not for China. It is for the world. And at this time, one can comfortably say, China is the leader of globalization in the world today. And it's a leader of a benign globalization that is creating one common humanity and one future for that common humanity. I think we all support this, and we'll talk about it because it is the good thing to do. And I think China deserves, a pat in the back for this thoughtful intervention in the history of humanity to create an equal, equitable, wealthy, and prosperous world.
Professor Peter Kagwanja, thank you for your insights. We'll leave it there for the moment.